Hey guys, so I was getting ready to go camping, and as you could hear from the first clip, making the god-awfulest noise you ever heard, clanging and clattering, carrying on. So I thought, well, maybe it's something simple. Doesn't appear to be. I tore the front of the engine off, was able to access the timing chains. It appeared that one of the tensioners had come apart, went down into the oil pan, caused some other issues. When you rev the engine up, you can barely see the oil pressure raise a little bit and drop back down. We've got an issue there. I shut the engine off. I looked down inside the pan, and I found some pieces that I could just barely get access to from the front of the oil pan. I don't know if you can see them here, but it almost looks like part of a piston skirt. Some heavier metal that might be part of the tensioner, not sure. And look like some bearing material. I don't know if we've got a rod bearing going bad. These 6.8 liter V10 engines have been notorious for having rod caps coming loose on them. This engine's only got 25,000 miles on it. I'm really disappointed to have such a tragic feat happen that early on, but I want to find out more, so I'm going to go ahead and set it up higher on jack stands, crawl up underneath of it, and take the oil pan off of it. To accomplish that, what you end up having to do is remove the engine mounts, jack up the engine, and put some blocks in between the engine mounts and the frame to hold the engine up. Drop the oil pan bolts down. Then you should be able to reach inside there and take the oil pickup tube loose from the oil pump, drop it down in the pan. That should give us enough room to ease that pan out of there. That's what they say in the manual anyway. I'm going to go ahead and give it a try, so stick with me. We'll show you how it's done, and I'll let you see what else we find. So I got her set up on jack stands. Now I'm going to drain the oil out of it. Now we're going to slide up in here and drain the oil real quick. Looks like it's a 16 millimeter for anybody that needs to know. I don't know if you could tell, but when I first pulled that drain plug out, there was just a little bit of what appeared to be green antifreeze. That's not a good sign either. There's no reason that antifreeze should be in the oil. So I'm not really expecting to see anything really good once we get this pan off. Once it gets done draining, we'll put the plug back in. Next step we're going to do is take the motor mount bolts loose, and we're going to jack the engine up and put some blocks in between the frame and the engine mounts. Then we'll take the oil pan bolts loose, and looks like we need to take the inspection shield off as well. That'll allow us to get to the back bolts a little easier on the oil pan. Go ahead and get this pan out of the way. Now I got the oil drained out. I'm going to go ahead and remove the inspection plate shield. That's what the manual said. A couple of 13mm bolts. Not really sure how that's going to help us getting this shield out of the way, but it says it in the manual, so a couple of bolts. Let's see, maybe it makes a difference here in a minute. And yeah, wouldn't it be easier if I had a lift, but for this instance I don't, and motorhomes generally are pretty heavy, so a home lift isn't going to make a big difference. Next step is going to be to remove the motor mount bolts, 2 nuts right here on either side. They're 18mm. They actually came off fairly easy. I guess maybe Ford knew you were going to have to take it back out. I don't know. And the other side, these are just your oil cooler lines. It shouldn't be in the way. The 2 bolts, not really easy for you to see through up in there, but so these are where we took the bolts out underneath. Right here's the upper part. We're going to raise the engine and try and put our block of wood between the mount here and the frame here. So this part stays attached to the engine. Now I have seen people remove those, but I don't think we're going to have to do that. If you look, you can see the bottom bolt. The mount has got a slot in it. So when you raise it up, that bolt will go right up along with the slot and give you plenty enough room. In the manual it just says raise the engine and put blocks between the mounts and the frame rail. Okay, it doesn't exactly tell you how to do it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my floor jack right underneath the crank pulley, and I'm going to put a block of wood between the crank pulley and the floor jack, and I'm going to jack it up that way. Now the other way would be to put an engine hoist on it and try and lift it. But seeing as how it's in a van, there's not a whole lot of room to hook to anything, and there's certainly no room to raise it any. So that's how I'm going to do it. And we'll see how that goes. So what I've done is I've put this 4x4, stood it up on my jack. I've got it between the bottom of the crankshaft and just set right on top of my floor jack. You want to make sure you got it nice and straight. So I'm going to go over there and I'm going to start jacking it up. And what we should see is this bolt that's sticking through the engine mount. We should start seeing that move upwards and hopefully give us enough clearance that we can put a block of wood in there and hold it up. We can see it's moving some. And I also took the inside cover off the engine compartment so I could look in there and make sure that the top of the engine components aren't being compressed against the top of the firewall or anything like that. And we'll keep going with it till we can get us a board up in there. So I found an old scrap 2x4 laying around. Just gonna go ahead and cut us off a couple of pieces that we can use. Should be good enough. We're just going to slide them up in there, and that should give us enough clearance to be able to get the oil pan off of there. And I will say, for safety reasons, don't ever stick your hand between the mount and the frame in case something happens. So after a little coercion, you can see I was able to get the block of wood over here on this side in between the mount, and one right here got wedged in between the block and the mount. Let the jack down. You know it's got pressure on there, so you're not supporting the engine. And we'll take the oil pan bolts loose. So the oil pan bolts are 13 millimeter. Just go all the way around, remove those. They're all the same size, so don't worry about keeping them in any kind of order. Just work your way around. Then we'll be able to drop it down and get access to the oil drain pickup tube. To get down to your last bolt, you can hold a little pressure on the bottom of the pan. Remove that bolt. It should be able to drop it down some. Oh goodness. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but there's a whole lot of metal chunks in the bottom of this pan. Oh wow. Now we got to reach up in there and unbolt the oil pump pickup tube. Oh, there's all kinds of metal pieces in here. Oh boy. I don't know if you can see any of this, but doesn't look good. I can't hardly believe it started. This looks like part of a piston rod. Yeah. We'll just put those back in there for now. till we get the rest of the pan off. Get a closer look. Here's the front of the oil pan. I had to reach up inside the bottom of the oil pan to take the hold down mounting plate loose for the pickup tube. But right here in the front, this is your oil pump pickup tube. There's 2 bolts, one here and one there, that we got to take loose as well and drop it down inside the pan before we can get it off. The mounting bolt inside the pan is 13 millimeter, and these are look like 8 millimeter or 5/16 is pretty close. Once I got the 2 bolts loose on the pickup tube, the pan just about fell out by itself. Slide this out of here and we'll take a look. Well, here's the inside of the pan. Pickup tube. Got plenty of little metal pieces in there. Plenty of metal chunks in the pan. It looks like piston material. This looks like piston rod material. So I'd say we're in pretty bad shape. Let's take a look inside the bottom of the crankcase. And here's the river engine. Got our girdle. Everything looks okay there. Looking up front, you can see front girdle's busted in half. And let's go around the front. Oh yeah, for sure. The 2 front cylinder connecting rods snapped in half. I'd say this engine's pretty much shot, or needs to come out and be thoroughly gone through at the very least. So that's how you get the oil pan off. Now we got the rest of the whole story of what was going on there, and we know for certain that it's going to need the engine completely taken out, probably gone through, if not just replaced, and have to inspect the block with the little bit of sign of antifreeze that we saw. It may be some damage to the block, especially since the rods were busted in there. So my thoughts are probably just going to need to replace the entire engine. But now you've seen how you can take the oil pan off yourself if you run into this situation. It's not beyond doable for yourself. You don't need a lift. Just a little set of metric sockets will do it, little jacks. And I guess we're not going to go camping anytime soon unless it's right here where it sits. See you next time.